All right, well, on behalf of the USM Internship and Shadowing Committee and the USM Alumni Association, my name is Susan Zarwell. I'm the Director of College Guidance here, and we all say welcome to you, whether you are watching this live or you are attending by watching the recording. This is another installment in our career panels where you get an insight into how people have navigated their own way to and through their careers with advice for you as you're looking toward college choices. This evening, we are talking about legal careers, and we are joined tonight by Neville Reed. He is from the USM class of 1979. He attended Harvard and Harvard Law School, and he's currently a partner at Fox, Swibel, Levin, and Carroll in Chicago. He is a capital partner and co-chair of the firm's bankruptcy, restructuring, and creditors' rights group, and he has represented a wide array of clients in all aspects of bankruptcy, restructuring, insolvency, and creditors' rights cases and transactions for over 25 years. He's been a bankruptcy panel trustee for both Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy cases for over 23 years. And in that capacity, he frequently investigates and he recovers fraudulent transfers and various assets for the benefit of creditors of corporate entities and individual debtors. He's been named to the list of Illinois super lawyers in 2005, 2006, and through 2012 through 2021, named a leading lawyer by the Law Bulletin Publishing Company since 2011. And in 2017, Neville was a co-recipient of the Role Model Award given by the Harvard Law School or Law Society of Illinois. We are also joined this evening by Jeffrey Glenn, from a graduate of Milwaukee Country Day from 1958. He attended Amherst and Yale Law School, and he is a shareholder at Anderson Kill in New York. He has litigated in the federal and state courts for over 30 years, and previously a member of 2 worldwide law firms. He has a substantial transnational practice. He's litigated extensively for both plaintiffs and defendants in areas such as securities, corporate, general, and general contract law. He has spent much of his career as a law professor at the New York, Brooklyn, and City University of New York Law Schools, and is the Special Assistant Corporation Counsel in charge of tort, administrative law, and affirmative litigation divisions of the Office of Corporation Counsel of the City of New York. He managed the medical malpractice defense of the city's Health and Hospital Corporation and led the litigation team, which defeated over 40 actions challenging the 42nd Street redevelopment project without a single loss. Mr. Glenn serves on the advisory committee on civil practice to the chief administrative judge of the state of New York, and he serves as the designated Anderson Kill representative to Interleges, a consortium of law firms based in over 20 countries, where he's a member of the executive committee. He's also a member of Anderson Kill's Foreign Investment Recovery Practice Group, and he is rated AV Preeminent Peer Review Rated, the top rating by his peers as listed in Martindale-Hubbell. In January of 22, Jeffrey was elected to the Legal Aid Society's Board of Directors. And also with us this evening, we have Smitha Chintamaneni from USM class of 96. She attended Washington University and the Washington University School of Law. She's a shareholder and co-chair of the real estate section at Von Briesen and Roper, and for nearly 20 years, she's represented businesses and governmental entities in real estate, commercial leasing and acquisition, eminent domain, taxation, and construction. Notably, she acts as counsel for the village of Mount Pleasant, Racine County, and Kenosha County in matters related to development. She's also served as counsel for various landowners in eminent domain matters, for a contractor in connection with claims arising out of construction of a Chicago high-rise office building, for Brown County on eminent domain and sales and use tax disputes, and for numerous landowners, businesses, and governmental authorities on real estate, zoning, permitting, eminent domain, and property taxation issues. She's also outside counsel for numerous business and governmental authorities on commercial leases, sale, acquisition of property, zoning, permitting, and property taxation issues. Her trial experience includes all aspects of trial in state and federal courts and oral arguments in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. In addition to her real estate practice, Smith has experience in trust and estate disputes involving multiple beneficiaries, high net worth assets, wills and trusts, and has acted as the court-appointed personal administrator of a high net worth estate. She is an affiliate member of Owners Council of America and is a regular speaker at their annual national conference. She is a member of NAIOP Wisconsin, serving on their public policy committee, and is a member of Wisconsin Policy Forum's Economic Development Committee. She's licensed to practice in Wisconsin and Illinois and has been consistently named the best lawyers of America for real estate and real estate litigation. She is also the former chair of the firm's Summer Associate Program and Recruiting Committee, and she's past co-chair of the Real Property Section of Milwaukee Bar Association. So as you can see, we have a number of specialties represented here this evening and very, very deep experience. So let's dig right in. And Smitha, we will start with you and then move through to Jeffrey and to Neville. Could you talk a little bit about your current role and your day-to-day responsibilities in your firm?
Well, thank you, Susan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time. As Susan has mentioned, I am a partner at a Milwaukee-based law firm. I've been practicing for about 20 years, primarily in the field of real estate and real estate litigation. When I get asked the question of what's my current role and day-to-day responsibilities, that's a difficult and easy question at the same time. Easy in the sense of I know the types of cases I'm going to work on for my clients on a day-to-day basis, but difficult because my clients' needs and the court decisions require me to think on my feet on a day-to-day basis. And while I may come in the office thinking I'm going to accomplish, items A, B, and C on my to-do list, oftentimes I end up going down to, X, Y, and Z. And so it's my days range anywhere from advising clients on real estate leases, acquisitions. This morning I was in court, the Milwaukee County Courthouse, on a contentious piece of litigation, followed by a couple of meetings with clients, followed by a couple of Zoom calls on tax matters. So every day is different, unique. It keeps life in the practice of law interesting, that's for sure.
Hey, Jeffrey, can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day?
Well, let's make it my day 2 weeks ago, since I've been out trout fishing for the last couple of days. I'm in charge of training at the firm. We're a firm of about 130 lawyers at 6 offices around the country. And we recruit typically from 2 sources. Young attorneys who have just come off of a federal, typically judicial clerkship, where they've been trained to some degree by a judge, or young attorneys who've come from the mega firms, the 1,000-person firms, after a couple of years. And we are primarily a litigation firm. The training in terms of what your students are going to be looking at, as a lawyer and as a law student, you continue to really study the broad nature of how to ask questions, how to look at issues, how to define what problems are and are not. And you're not, in either college or law school, going deeply into one particular little item. What we do, once you're in a firm like ours, or when I previously was the head of litigation for New York City, you take that generalized knowledge and you apply it to a specific fact pattern, and you look closely at what the pattern provides and what the pattern doesn't provide. And I think that's one of the things that makes lawyering so interesting, that it is essentially the whole breadth of human experience concentrated on one set of facts at a time. I also run our pro bono practice, which is very important to our firm, and we can talk a little bit about that later. And I also represent the firm on a series of national and New York State committees that draft the procedure laws for both the federal and state court system.
Thank you. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day?
Sure. So my practice, first of all, thanks also, Susan, and really my pleasure to always reconnect the University School. It was highly instrumental in contributing to my career and my professional enjoyment. It's a great institution. I specialize in all aspects of insolvency. So I deal with people who are grappling with some aspect of financial distress. It could be a company that is not having a very successful time with its creditors. It could be a seasonal problem, but sometimes there are more deeply structural problems in a business, and they come to me and they need to negotiate relationships with their creditors. And on the surface that may sound a little dry, but actually it is very dynamic. Because when you think of the broad array of the different types of companies, the different types of businesses, each of those businesses presents a unique way of making money, unique ways of losing money, and also unique ways of restructuring your relationship. So day to day, today was reasonably typical. I have been trying to negotiate what's called a forbearance agreement with actually in two situations. One is a company that finds opportunities for people to place their product with Amazon. Cool idea, great innovative management, but they fell behind their payments with one of their major lenders. And they're trying to figure out how do we preserve the value of the company and get through this difficult time with our lender. And so with a forbearance agreement, which is very common in our industry, you're trying to get the benefits of a bankruptcy filing without actually filing bankruptcy. Ironically, I actually talk a lot of people out of filing for bankruptcy, because when you file bankruptcy, you actually lose a lot of that value that can be lost as a result of the stigma that can come from the bankruptcy filing itself. And so we're trying to, and are getting pretty close to convince the lender that our client is better off alive than dead, that they will actually make more money, and it is in their interest if they work with us to do a restructuring of the debt over a certain period of time. And that's often what you're trying to do. We're as lawyers, we are persuading all day. We are trying to persuade people that what we want to do for our clients is in the other side's best interest. And the sooner you learn how to do that, the sooner you learn how to convince someone that what I'm proposing to do is in your client's best interest, the more effective you're going to be as a negotiator. Another company, actually, this was a little bit sexier. This company restores old cars from the 30s, Delages, Delahaye's, you see those old black and white films in France of people racing these cool looking cars. I did not realize until this person came to my assistance that is a huge, well, it's not huge in terms of numbers, but in terms of dollars, a lot of people want to pay a lot of money to restore, to purchase old, I should say, restored old cars like rare art. It can be into the millions of dollars. And this person is really, really good at it. He's exceptionally good. And unfortunately, his company ended up going into bankruptcy, or not voluntarily, but involuntarily, when some of his creditors wanted to get paid, and they got nervous. And so I led the team to negotiate with the creditors to get that involuntary dismissed, because again, convincing those creditors that they are going to get more money from the restoration of these cars if the company stays out of bankruptcy, avoids a stigma, as opposed to being in it. And I'll just finish by saying this, something that picked up on what Jeff said. Always be careful to not fall into practicing your profession within a vacuum. Every area of expertise, and mine included, is part of a broader network. And so one of the most enjoyable things that I've done, and this was a big part of my life for the last year, is that I was president of the National Association of Bankruptcy Trustees, and was dealing with trustees and their issues across the country. It was just absolutely fascinating. And when we were addressing some legislative changes we wanted in the bankruptcy code, they asked me to testify before Congress. This was before my presidency, but that was one of I was on the board. That was one of the highlights of my career, to actually go to Congress and testify about, as an expert, about changes that should be made in the bankruptcy system. So I'll stop there, but those are some of the highlights of what I do and why I enjoy what I do.
Thank you. All right. I warned you before we started that I would deviate if the conversation brought that up.
Okay.
We're one question in and we're already deviating a little. But okay. It sounds like, just from hearing all of your stories, your days in many ways are unpredictable, and you are also dealing with the messiest aspects of the human experience. While also, Jeffrey, you talked about discerning patterns, some of the most logical aspects of it. I'm wondering, can you, it does sort of lead to the next question, but how you became interested in your particular areas of specialty, And it sounds like for each of you, depending on what that specialty is, there are particular emotional strengths that you need to have in working with people who are very, very fearful or feeling very contentious. How did you find your area of specialty, that logical part, and what strengths do you need to handle the emotional component of your work? Samantha, let's start with you.
Sure. That's a great question, Susan, and I love answering it because it does allow me to share with you all the different reasons why I went into my profession and what I draw on. So I'm from a big family. Number one, I'm one of six, and as a member of a big family, I had to do a lot of negotiating, whether it was at the dinner table or on the bankruptcy, on the basketball court or whatever. So from the as long as I can remember, I was negotiating. I kind of have a personality where I'm a middle child. So I tend to think that there's a resolution to every issue. So that my family upbringing certainly helps me deal with a lot of the stress that people have. I'm also a person of faith. I believe in God, and my wife's a pastor, and I've been teaching Bible study for the last 3 decades. And my faith roots me in not only trying to find a solution, but finding grace, helping people to trying to remain the calmest person in the room. That is extremely important. By the time you get to a financial distress situation, a lot of people are at each other's throats. I mean, you see some of the, as you said, Susan, you do see some of the nastiest parts of human nature. And if I didn't have the ability to center myself and not take every thing that is said personally, because there's a lot of projection. For those of you who study psychology, you don't have to study, you just have to know it from life experience. When a lot of people have problems in one area of their life, maybe with their spouse or with their children or with their job, if you're the person that they see right when they're on their last nerve, they will often project their emotion onto you. So as a trustee, when I come into a distress situation where people have been fighting at each other very aggressively, I often get a lot of things thrown at me that I had nothing to do in creating. So I have to be the grown-up in the room and learn how to, again, center my faith, focus people on the problem, and try to have them to not focus on each other as causes of their problems. Focus on the problem itself. Separate the problem from the person, and the sooner you can do that and maintain patience and set an example of equilibrium and equanimity throughout the process, the easier you'll be able to create a resolution. And there are few things more rewarding in life that I've experienced in my profession than to have started with total nastiness all around and ending up where you're not necessarily singing Kumbaya, but you have come to a resolution where people saw value. People end up seeing value where previously they did not, where they just saw despair. And I'll just give you one quick analogy from my childhood. When I was going to USM, my dad was a carpenter, and he used to take old houses in Milwaukee. Milwaukee used to sell construction workers or owners of construction companies. They would sell them these old homes for $1, and then the carpenter would fix it up and prepare it for a family. And so my dad would take all of his boys on the job site over the summer. We always had summer jobs, and we would help fix up those homes to create value, to create a home where previously it was an eyesore. And I never forgot that experience, and that has helped me deal with situations where people otherwise would see just eyesores, and you try to show them, hey, we can actually create some value here. We can actually resurrect and have a better trajectory.
That's a beautiful metaphor for the moment that we are in 2022. So, Samantha, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are?
Sure. I think I echo a lot of what Neville said, which is the personality fit. I'm the oldest child, unlike Neville, who's the middle child, I should say. So I had the type A assertive personality. I'm not afraid to state my point assertively, I should say that. But I do think that no matter what type of law you practice, whether it's private practice like the three of us, or if it's government, or if it's nonprofit, charity work, there's different types of law. This is just the law firms we're talking about here, but I think critical to practice of law is psychology, understanding people, whether it's your client or the government or someone who's in need of charitable services, their personality, what's driving them, the emotions behind their decisions, because most of our job, whether we like it or not, is counseling our clients, whether that's setting expectations, whether that's setting expectations with the court, opposing counsel. It's communication is, I think, a fundamental trait that every successful lawyer has to have. How do you communicate your position effectively, advocate for your clients in a respectful manner? So going back to your question of how I got to this, I frankly in high school thought I'd like science. And I thought I'd want to pursue a career in medicine. But I found myself constantly being pulled back to the liberal arts, psychology with Liz Krieg, who used to be the college guidance counselor, English with P.D. Basson, and JS history, AP history. So I loved those classes more. And when I went to college, I started focusing more on a psychology major with an English minor. And I thought law was a natural fit for me. There's always something nuanced in law. Critical thinking is also a key aspect to success. So I was always driven by humanities, and I was a people-oriented person. So I knew I wanted to be in a profession where I could interact with people on a regular basis. You always learn something in the law. Every day, to this day, and I probably always will for the rest of my career, learn something new. It's always ever changing. And so I fell into that by virtue of my interest in liberal arts and humanities. I spent some time in college researching other areas. I thought about a clinical psychology major or other areas, but I kept coming back to law as something that I thought was very fluid, very broad. I could pick different areas of expertise. I'd have to pick it in college. And so I ended up going to law school, and I thought I'd want to be a corporate M&A transactional attorney like many ideological law students. And I interviewed for a firm in Milwaukee. And I remember the interviewer looking at me, and he's like, "You're not a court transactional, you're a litigator." And I was like, no, I'm a transactional attorney. He's like, no, you're a litigator personality. And 20 years later on, I think he's probably generally right. I have some transactional component, but my litigation skills definitely come through. So if I'm advising, I advise individual business owners, but I also advise county board members, like the Village of Mount Pleasant boards, that's 12 people, or Racine County, Kenosha County, large board members. And it's my job to draw a consensus, to move towards a decision. So being able to advocate for your position, understanding all the facts, I think are critical skills that anyone who wants to pursue a career in law should really focus on, whether it's in high school or college, and definitely in law school.
Jeffrey, how about you? How did you get to your area of specialty, and what are the elements of your personality that make it a good fit?
Well, I graduated Milwaukee Country Day in 1958 when there was not a single minority person connected to the school in any sense. I started college and got rapidly involved in the civil rights revolution at that time. Decided to go to law school so that I could try to work in the civil rights movement. And that's exactly what happened. My first job was as the first trial lawyer for New York Legal Aid to get people out of mental hospitals. And that's a good thing to mention, because we made a terrible mistake. We got tens of thousands of people out of New York State mental hospitals, and they wound up on the street because we didn't have a support system for them. And we as lawyers were doing the right thing. We were getting people who were improperly held against their will in hospitals but we didn't solve the governmental problems that come with it. And that's no different 60 years ago than it is today. When I did learn how to do what I do now, it's because I was head of the Harlem office of Legal Aid Society. And legal aid civil clients all shared one unifying fact. They didn't have any money. And learning how to defend people who have no money in the American society is a terrific way to learn how to litigate, because you don't have many defenses. And I began loving it. And sometimes our skills were able to move the courts somewhat in the direction of our clients. As I moved on in my career, I switched sides in the sense that I wound up as head of litigation for New York City. And but things that we were able to do in some cases was bring federal money into the city budget, things like that. I spent 30 years in the public sector and then moved into the private sector, among other reasons, because I had children to go to college. And have discovered that for the most part, people who are in the law firms tend to have the right values and will support things like pro bono situations. Sometimes the clients are difficult in that kind of situation. On the other hand, they often appreciate that the best litigators they have are the ones who had the worst cases. And that was the group that I represented for 30 years. So that's kind of where I got where I am now.
Okay, thank you. This is, now I just want to completely deviate from the question and dig into some of your answers. But you've all worn many hats, as we've just heard. Could you talk a little bit about the specific educational and mentorship opportunities? Jeffrey, you just talked about a few of those that have come in, but connecting your educational experience to your legal careers and how you've built a network as you've gone through. And Smitha, let's begin with you.
Sure. Law school is a unique graduate school program because unlike medical school or an MBA school, you don't learn a specific area of law and come out as an expert in that area of law. We don't have a residency program like medical schools do. So I'm not going to come out and be a real estate litigator. A lot of what young attorneys, as we know, they learn by doing the work when they finish law school. Law school teaches you how to think critically, how to analyze a case, how to analyze your client's facts and apply the law to the confines of the facts you're given. But going to your question of, mentors and educational opportunities, I would say internships that I pursued during law school were extremely helpful. I worked for the DOJ in DC after my first year of law school as a unpaid internship on white collar crime matters, an area I don't practice in, but I certainly learned how to hone my critical analysis skills. And then as you develop as a young lawyer in a law firm, I've always been in private practice, seeking out good older mentors to take me to hearings and cases and client meetings. It's a lot of training. Like I say the first 7 years of practicing law are really learning the area of law and learning how to be a lawyer. Law school teaches you how to think, but practicing law teaches you how to be a lawyer. And so I would encourage students who want to pursue careers in law school, reach out and do different internships. After college, I interned at the public defender's office in Milwaukee County. I knew real quickly that I did not want to be a public defender for Milwaukee County. That was just not where my interest lay, but I gave it a shot and I tried out different areas. So seeking out and being actively assertive to find mentors who are willing to train you, take you under their wing, and being flexible, because when I was a young attorney, I never said no to anything. I said, sure, yes, I'll do it. And I made the extra time and effort to take the extra steps to learn a different area of law. my career took a circuitous route. I was not always a real estate litigator. I was a general commercial litigator. I did insurance coverage work for insurance companies for a while. And all those skills have helped me become who I am now because they've all been a piece of the building blocks of my career. So I would say, I would encourage people interested in law to seek out a broad area of internships to experience when they're young, to see what they really truly like, because not all area of law is going to be interest to every single person. So
Jeffrey, can you tell us a little bit, and as somebody who's also taught law school as well, I think you've probably got some really good insight into this.
Well, to sort of go to your universe, while in college, it's a great idea to do summer internships in some, if you think you might want to be a lawyer, in some lawyer or quasi-legal situation, like a prosecutor's office or a legal defense office. In law school these days, typically one gets hired by a firm after the first summer. And sometimes I say to some of my best students, pass that one up, wait for your second year. Take a year somewhere in the public sector and see what you learn there. Among other things, you will be given far more authority and responsibility in the public sector than anywhere else because they don't have enough staff. Once you get out, I absolutely agree with Smitha. It's a situation in which you will work with one or more, typically more, persons at the firm or the institution that you're at. And what you will do is write. You gotta write all the time, and you gotta rewrite all the time. This is a profession in which we do get fairly good at making well-modulated statements. But let me just tell anybody who doesn't know, if you get 15 minutes before an appellate court, you're way ahead of the game. And that's not where it's played out. And where I see young people coming out of law school into the firms who are not moving as quickly as they could, it's because they haven't written enough. And so that's something I urge. The other thing is, if you are in a situation where you're a summer associate or you're coming out of a law firm, if you don't understand what somebody, particularly an old fogey like me, tells you to do, for God's sakes, ask them. They do not want you to spend 20 hours writing the wrong thing. They're going to have to write it off their bills.
Yeah.
All right. Neville, can you tell us a little bit about the educational lily padding that you did, and then the mentorship opportunities that helped you advance in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two general observations. One is the college, if you're in high school, be very, very thoughtful and diligent about selecting a college that has a reputation for really, really strong writing programs. And by that, I mean programs where you're gonna have to learn how to synthesize large, complex material and sustain an argument over an extended period of time. And when I was at Harvard, for example, for Harvard College, I sought out, like Smith, I had multiple interests freshman year. I had some affinity for science, but mostly more for social science, and really got serious about it my second semester of my freshman year. And I sought out a major called social studies, which sounds like third grade, poppycock, but it's actually one of Harvard's elite majors. You have to apply to get into it. And it's an interdisciplinary major where you have to combine 2 or 3 different disciplines in the social sciences. It could be economics, political science, history, it could be political philosophy, and you had a mandatory thesis. It was called the Great Books Method of Learning, where you took these tutorials that were really intense. You read difficult, dense material, Marx, Durkheim, Weber, and you had to really dissect their arguments, starting as a sophomore. And then, like I said, a mandatory thesis. You had to find a topic that required you to apply some aspect of political philosophy to an area, to a problem that that you were passionate about, and you had to, as one of my mentors said in college, you have to learn how to sustain an argument over a long period of time, a long number of pages. In my case, it was about 150 pages. So mandatory thesis, that gave me the discipline of learning how to analyze arguments, do research, and come up with an argument, adjust the argument as necessary, and not be afraid of that level of intensity, and actually putting together what was essentially like a small book. And what made a difference there was finding professors who were really, really good at mentoring you, not being too proud about writing, being willing to admit to yourself that this is not as good as I can do. I love the way when I finished my thesis and I compared it to what I had written as a freshman, it was like night and day. I mean, that way I knew I was getting my money's worth. So seek out the challenging majors, seek out the professors who are really good teachers, not just who are brilliant. I mean, they're all brilliant at these schools, but they're not all good teachers. And there are people who are just really, really good teachers. I took that same attitude of seeking out people who were going to give me constructive feedback into my law firm experience. I sought out the partners who were good teachers, very good in their field, but are willing to give me the time and to give me the honest feedback. And let me make a comment here about for those students out there who might be women or students of color, because there is an unfortunate tendency in our profession where minorities and women don't always necessarily want to be perceived as not being up to par. So you're sometimes afraid to subject yourself to the hard graders. Big mistake. Find the people who are going to give you honest feedback. You want to be the person who goes into their office. Senior guy like Jeff is going to close the door and say, "This writing is crap." And I want, and I'm being honest, and I expect you to do better on the next one, as opposed to what we have come to call the bigotry of low expectations, where someone says, "Oh, nice job, Susan, nice job, Smith," but in reality, they don't believe it's a very good job. That's one of the easiest paths to a road to ruin, is to get false or non-feedback. Seek out the hard graders, people who care about you, and subject yourself to the criticism and respond to the feedback, and then make your product excellent the next time. And I have needed that advice every year of my life. But now I'm 61 now and I know what I'm doing, but I'm still learning some things. But coming up through the ranks, it was extremely helpful, Susan, to have mentors who were honest and who didn't give me false feedback, and to find people who were willing to give me a lot of responsibility that they otherwise might have kept for themselves. I never forget, in one case, I loved going into court, and I teamed up with one of the senior partners in our bankruptcy practice who hated going into court, but he had all this business. He said, "Neville, you go into court. You can do all this stuff. You can figure it out. You go into court." And he gave me all of the court stuff, and I loved doing it. And that ended up giving me skills that then became cumulative, because then I was able to market myself within the firm to other people who needed somebody who's comfortable with bankruptcy court. And I'll just finish it with this one analogy. This shows you the power of mentoring and friendship. And I'm so glad Jeff's on here, because that's such a great example of what he's setting. At 81 years old, he's still mentoring people. He's loving his profession. That is such a wonderful example. And I want to give you an example of somebody who's been very special to me. When I was a young lawyer, his name is Dave Curry. Dave, if you're out there listening, you're awesome. I doubt he is, because he's not a USM grad, but Dave was a partner in the bankruptcy practice at Mayor Brown, and he took me under his wing, gave me a lot of responsibility, and I did a project for him in bankruptcy court, won, and it was for a major client, Rockwell International. And to make a long story short, when I won, the other side appealed it to the next level, which in our system is the district court. And I won there. And when I won there, the other side decided to appeal to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. And that's the last, for those of you who don't know, it's the last step before the Supreme Court. And I'll never forget, that was a point at which the client the billing partner said to Dave, and I learned about this later, said, well, I was going to the Seventh Circuit. Maybe you ought to step in, Dave, and do this, because this is now, there's more risk involved. But Dave stood by me and said, no, Neville won below. He won the district court. He knows what he's doing. I'm going to continue to support him. And it was one of the highlights of my life. I won at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, and I kept in touch with Dave over the years. I was at my former firm for 22 years, Mayor Brown, and then I've been at my current firm since 2009. But Dave kept in touch with me over all those years. And that kind of mentoring was really, really exemplary, where you stand behind somebody and you keep in touch with them throughout their life, and you continue to give them opportunity. Now Dave and I have teamed up, and we have been on panels helping the country of Bahrain develop their new bankruptcy law. Bahrain has emerged from a pre-modern or pre-Western bankruptcy system. They've emerged from that to adopt a bankruptcy law that's similar to ours. And so Dave and I have worked together to help them understand how the new law works and how we implement those same kinds of laws here in the United States. But he's been with me for 3 decades, and those kind of mentors are priceless. Seek them out and just keep in touch.
Thank you. So Jeffrey and Smith, I'd like to ask you, we've heard some really great advice here from Neville. Find an honest critic, write a lot, and find an unflinching champion. Are there other pieces of advice, regardless of where a student goes to college, regardless of what they major in? Are there other tips that you would pass on to a student looking toward the next 4 years of college?
I would say I follow Brene Brown. She's a TED Talks. You've probably heard of her. The concept of grit is what I think about a lot these days, especially the last 2 years in the pandemic, where we're trying to just get through. But I think as young lawyers, being consistent and working through all the revisions of documents. I agree with Jeffrey, writing is critical to young attorneys to develop their skills. And not only helps your writing, but it helps you crystallize your way of thinking and thinking methodically, because practice of law is a methodical process. It's not just, let me just sit back and ponder. It's, what do I need to accomplish? What elements do I need to meet? And how can I meet those elements? So it's almost like outlining over and over again and thinking in a step-by-step process. So I would say grit, like working harder than the next person to solve the problem. It's not about, a lot of law is not about how smart you are. It's about how hard you work at your area of law, and looking for the little nuggets of facts that can take a case from a mediocre 50% chance of winning to a significant chance of winning case. And not being afraid to stick with it, because unlike other areas, cases or matters we work on, such as advising the government of Bahrain, takes months, if not years, to accomplish. So it's sticking with it over time and being consistent on what your goal is, and realizing you're going to have some, bad days, some good days. But you got to have more good days than bad days in the grand scheme of a successful career. So I would say grit is a skill that I think high schoolers should really focus on, and not being afraid to push through the difficult times and saying, I'm going to give up. I'm going to go find the easy answer. No. Just keep working at it.
Now, I don't have much to add, because college was so long ago for me, but I think what Neville was saying is key. Don't go for the easy A, because the folks at the law schools don't care about that. I came out of Country Day as a chemistry major, and that was helpful to me. I didn't wind up as a chemistry major, but take the tough courses, and if you find something that you like, take the next course in that process. Don't just go all over the place. If you enjoy studying French, then take the French novel course in the next semester or something like that. Keep moving through something so that you come out with a an accomplishment in what you're doing in your college career. If you just do a little bit of everything, I don't think the grades are going to make a hell of a lot of difference. And then once you're out, any place you go, public, private, you're going to find people who want to help you out, and let them help you out. And that includes doing it over again if you need to for them. Again, don't take the easy route. Don't go to the partner who is there because they have $2 million worth of business, but they hand it all off to somebody else. It's a tough profession, and you got to learn it in your first 10 years.
Susan, can I just add one thing to what we just said? One piece of advice that I got from a practicing lawyer when I was considering law is something that I've never forgotten. It was so true. He said, "Neville, you really don't know. You don't learn how to write in law school. You should learn how to write before law school. In law school, you take a lot of exams, and you might do a third-year paper, but the rigor of actually going through the paper writing process, that's in college. So you got to really, really go for the really strong, great liberal arts programs. I totally agree with Smith. I'm a strong believer in liberal arts, developing your mind, developing your ability to think and write critically. That's in college. Don't think, well, I'll learn how to write when I'm in law school. No, learn how to write when you're in college. And then law school kind of refines that, or sort of channels that in the legal training. And then, of course, you're continuing to write when you actually are practicing. But I just thought that was helpful advice for me in my career.
I think that leads to another question that I have as a college counselor. Very often, students and families feel compelled to look at particular schools that ranked institutions, and we know that certain schools, those names carry weight for a reason. But some of the skills that you're talking about are really developed through a close teaching relationship and that mentorship, which is harder which you might not always get at a particular kind of institution if you'd be happier at a smaller institution or a bigger one. For you, can you talk a little bit, and are you all involved in the hiring process in some way?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Can you talk a little bit, to what extent does, and with law school, of course, you have to have a legal degree. To what extent does the undergraduate school name mean anything? And are there other things that take greater precedence in the hiring decision?
Yeah, I can start with that one. I have done recruiting for my law firm for about 7-8 years. I was a summer associate recruiting chair, so I was responsible for hiring all the summer associates / interns, we call them. I will tell you candidly that while I certainly want qualified summer associates, people who have good grades, what I focus more on is who has good academic credentials and has the personality fit. Because I could hire the #1 at Harvard for Harvard Law School, but if that person can't read or write or talk to clients or be able to have strong interpersonal skills, they're not going to be, their success is limited in some ways to being an in the office person. To be a successful, you got to be well-rounded. So I believe people skills take attorneys much further in their careers than simply focusing on writing and reading. So I certainly give a lot of weight to where they went to school, whether it's mostly law school, frankly. Undergraduate is good to have, but what kind of experience have they had in law school? What are their grades in law school? But more importantly, what's their character? What's their work ethic? Are they willing to take criticism? Are they willing to take feedback? Because if I'm going to hire somebody who has a very big ego, it's going to be a challenge for not just me, but my other partners who want to work with that individual who was not willing to take constructive criticism. So I think that's really the mindset that I have when I look at summer associate candidates.
Thank you. Jeff, what do you have to add?
I can't remember the last time anybody really looked at what the undergraduate school was. And the other thing is that this may be different than firms like Mayer Brown, but we do not tend to hire from Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, unless you have made your career, which is, what I came into this firm after I'd been out for 35 years. We would much rather take somebody off the law review at Marquette than take somebody who's in the bottom of their class in Chicago. And then when we're looking at somebody, we want them to tell us who to talk to at the law school that knows what they're like, and we call them up and we really talk to them. It's just what Smith was talking about. It's not merely that they have to have a way to deal with clients, they have to have a way to deal with their colleagues. And so it's really important. And I think it's useful, but others may disagree, if they've had some clinical experience in law school, if they have the opportunity, and most law schools now give it to you, to have actually done work for a legal aid or a prosecutor and have it double reviewed by the prosecutor that you're working for and by your teacher. We tend to talk to those folks a lot when we're doing our hiring. If people are recommended by their teachers who have actually seen them doing work, that's very important in terms of getting a job.
I would say, Sue, you want me to address that or no? The question? Yeah. I would say, I agree with Jeff that the further you get from college, the more attenuated the relevance of the college to getting a job. However, it's not just about getting a job. It's about what kind of person you are and what kind of person you have become. And I'm sure, Susan, you've seen in your college counseling how colleges really can shape people to be pretty remarkable individuals. So I would say that in my experience, the connection or the relevance of the college experience is what kind of person have they become. So I really love it when somebody comes to, and I've been doing recruiting and diversity issues and social development issues all of my career, and I really love it when a resume just sings with credibility and with integrity. So when you see, for example, somebody who went to, I don't know if the name of the college is all that important, but just what they did in college is interesting and they're passionate about it and they're able to talk about it. Like they might list their thesis or something. It's a conversation piece that helps you as a student interviewing for the position or as a candidate convey what you're like as a person. People have done some really wonderful things in college, and some people have gone overseas. They've written books, and people have invented. They've got patents. So more than just the name of the college and what grades you've gotten is what is the relation between the kind of person you are and what you did in that college. And that's what I find interesting and helpful.
We just have a couple of minutes left, and I want to be mindful of your time. I'm wondering, I'm going to give you an either or, and you can pick what you'd like to answer here. I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities you foresee in your field that might be exciting for a potential attorney, or if there are particular books that you would recommend a student to read who are considering a legal career.
Well, I'll just be real brief and say that I think it's one of the most exciting things, one of the most exciting times to be a lawyer and to go to law school. If I were to do it again and I were coming up now, I absolutely would go to law school over again. Part of the reason is because I find the problems that are facing the younger generation pretty demanding. I think climate change is going to present extraordinary challenges across the entire world, society, government, business. And this whole, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, but this whole notion of performative politics where people are just sort of grandstanding, I think that's going to go out the door really fast when little Johnny in northern Georgia can't play outside because his mom says you're going to be incinerated if you go outside. That's why I think we're reaching that point where people are going to start asking much more serious questions if they aren't already. And we're going to need thoughtful lawyers with, to Jeff's and Samantha's point, character, compassion, but intelligence, grit, stamina, We're going to need people like that who know how to go into a courtroom or go into a government, go before Congress, and stay focused on the problem and say, we've got to do something about this. It is not acceptable that we are going to sit by and have these problems fester and deteriorate. No previous part of our history was survived or exceeded by people being performative. People had to take on problems and they got things done, whether it was Social Security, whether it was the Civil War, whether it was ending Jim Crow. We're beyond the grandstanding point. We have to now solve problems. And I'll just say that one of the biggest joys I've had as a father is to, my daughter is the co-chair of the Yale mock trial team. And we have 5 kids and she's the only one that's probably going to become a lawyer. So I'm really, really happy about this. But I saw her at the national competition in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where she was doing trial, putting on a trial. And it was so rewarding because she has a real, first of all, she co-led the team to 3rd in the nation, which was great. I like that. But the fact that she has found in the skills that lawyers utilize a way of pursuing her passion for justice. She's going to do an internship in a public defense place in Harlem over the summer. And I just am just so grateful that she and others in her generation are finding in law what people like Jeff and others and myself and Smith and found when we came up, that it's a great way to be a problem solver in your community, and the problems are getting worse. And we need good lawyers. We need good lawyers, period.
I will quickly comment not on Neville's point, but in books. I remember reading 1L by Scott Turow when I went to law school. When I was in college, actually, I was thinking about law school. It's a good, fast, easy read, but it's probably a little dated now compared to how law schools probably work more digitally than back in the day with blue books and handwriting out exams. But it's a good insight into what a first year of law school is like, because really the first year of law school is the most critical year of law school, both in terms of shaping your critical analysis, your thinking, and your writing skills. So Scott Turow, 1L book is what I'd recommend, that high schoolers interested in law should pick up that book.
I think anybody coming out of the university school and thinking about law ought to try reading the Constitution of the United States.
There you go.
Very few people have, and it includes a few things nobody knows about. For example, the southern states were allowed to have 3/5 of a person additional voters for all of the slaves that they owned. That's the United States Constitution. Read the book, read it, see what's there and see what isn't there, and see whether it gets you upset. And if it does, then maybe you should go to law school.
That seems like a good thing to both end on and begin with. There's so much more I would love to ask you about. Jeff, if that's what got you into working with the civil rights, and Neville, if you knew going into school that watching your dad build value where none was seen, is that what propelled you through? There's so many questions I want to dig into. And all of you, thank you so much for sharing so much of your own personal stories through school and into law, and how you've learned at Smith for becoming a scientist through psychology and law and the humanities. Thank you. You've given us much, much, much to think about. I'm so deeply appreciative of you sharing your professionalism and your wisdom with us. You've given some really great tidbits for students who are hoping to follow in your very big and very impressive footsteps. There is one question that is in. If you are open to being contacted by any of the attendees, could you share your email in the chat?
Sure.
All I have to do is figure out how to do it.
Okay.
Actually, you have my email. You can put it.
Yes, I do. So if you're good with that, I can share that.
Right.
Okay, I will email.
Okay. And thanks to the school for putting on this kind of program. I think it's useful.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Thanks to the school. Wonderful
Thank
idea.
you
Thanks
very
for-
much.
You bet.
Well, thank you. I wish you all well and keep thinking spring wherever you are. I don't think it's anywhere yet.
Still snow in upstate New York.
Well, happy shoveling.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night.
All right, thank you.
care.
Bye-bye.